couple of texts first, and if we have time, then we'll get to the more serious subject that I wanted to try to explore between now and our 4:30 guest. I asked Gargi to translate the texter who had wrote, "The president called the skier who spoke out a loser, doesn't publicly congratulate the women who won the gold and then made a joke about them. The people who wanted politics out of sports don't mind the whole men's team involvement." Here's the only exception I would take with that. That presumes what I'm not willing to be as presumptuous about. That presumes, I think, if I'm reading that right, after you've translated it for me, is that texter is saying that by definition, if you chose to visit the White House or to go to be introduced at the State of the Union address, you are making a political statement that is, you might as well be holding up a Trump placard. And I would say that could be true, but I don't believe it has to be. And I tend to think if we want to rip, we want to assume that's the statements being made. I know there's a lot of people, well, it's naive to think otherwise. Well, but that's your thinking. My whole point through all this is other people do not have to be prisoners to these purity tests. And I'll say beyond that, what if that's what they're doing? The test, even in these ridiculous times, because I don't think anybody would suggest we're very pro-Trump on this show. But the test is always defending the right for somebody to speak or to make whatever political statement they want where you disagree with it. It's easy when you agree with it. We've lost that in this culture. It's the biggest single loss, in my view, that we have had. And that's part of what I'm arguing with. For example, there are people who want to attach the assumption that for the players who didn't show up, by God, they're taking a stand. I knew it. I knew they had some courageous individuals on that team.
And a lot of them are from Minnesota.
That's true.
That took the stand.
What did Russo just tweet?
They got stuff going on.
Yes. So again, that's the game. But that's the stupid game we're in. If you're prisoner to that, everything's got to fit into a mold, regardless of what the facts are. And I don't think it serves the great middle of the country. I don't think it serves us at all going down that particular road. I've also got an argument with, let's see if I can find the text. Where did it go? Your snowflake guest, I guess he's referring to Adam Minter, says, quote, "We should celebrate the players that didn't meet with Trump," and then turns around and said athletes should just be athletes. So basically athletes shouldn't talk politics unless they agree with you. The libs, huh? Ha ha, such hypocrites. And my response was, I believe the point he was making, I think what he wasn't necessarily saying we have to celebrate they were anti-Trump. He was celebrating that they had a choice.
They had the ability.
What was his sentence? What were his sentences right before? I used to correspond. I used to write out of China. I used to live in China. You have no choice there.
Correct.
You got to show up and you got to raise the flag. So to me, what he was saying, when he said celebrate, I believe he meant celebrate the fact that you have that option.
That's exactly what he meant.
I don't think this is difficult.
That's exactly
but when I said the texter guy, it's like, well, no, that's not what he meant at all. You know exactly what he meant. You just don't want to acknowledge it. It's like, well, I guess we can check with him. But if the context was, man, here's what I'm used to. I lived there for years, and it's obviously all autocratic. There's no athlete that can, at a podium, say, by the way, this regime is shaky to me. Or, I'd like to be where you want me to be, but I kind of got a stomachache. His point was, there are no options. Either way. So you can choose to go to the White House, or you can choose to decline. For political reasons, for practical reasons, whatever the case may be. But meantime, we're taking, like I said, we're taking these, we're checking these boxes. Like, okay, now we know a lot more about you. To what end? What are you going to do? I mean, so you have this, I guess, this ledger that you keep. And now those are the bad guys. And there's nothing else they can do that will ever make me feel differently about how they handle that particular situation. That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I should probably leave it at that. I mean, I got it. There's a million.
I'm sure
there's a million texts that are coming in, but right wings appalled, left wings enthralled, centers revived. Wolves in 5.
Hang on, I wasn't ready. That was a quick one.
The problem with your reasoning about the politics is as soon as Guerin invited an appointee of the administration, not an elected official, it became an implied endorsement of the administration for everyone involved. Godspeed to you, man, if that's the way you think. If you think on the basis of that decision, if it is as he's laying out, that then everybody in that room is impugned, you're not very open-minded. But you know why you believe that? Because you want to believe it. Because of the boogeyman. And I said this on the show yesterday. There's a million reasons to criticize and savage this administration. I hear about it daily from people who notice on the right. But I'm not going to put that on everybody who is on that particular team. And I'll ask another question again. If a Democratic administration was in place and someone from that administration was invited to be in there, just answer honestly. Would you be every bit as offended by that decision? If you would, Godspeed to you. I respect you, and you'll never hear from me again. I've already said what I think about Patel being there. I couldn't have been more vicious or more negative about it at all. But again, we're not playing. We're not in these games where there's any sort of. I don't think there's much consistency to exactly how we feel or when we're going to get offended. And we're going to say, there's always politicians involved. Somebody's in the room, big deal. But now, Minnesota has to be held accountable and responsible for what might have been a decision that Bill Guerin said you can come into the room and celebrate. Okay, that's fine. Again, I think I know why you've come to that conclusion, but I just don't happen to necessarily share it. I guess we're going to have to wait on where else we want to get to because it's already 12 after. Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line is at 64686. I was hoping that, quite frankly, we were going to talk mainly to our last guest and about the Olympic part of it, but the point he made is, I think, the reality of where we are. Politics has always had a place in it, and like we say, we believe in the shut up and dribble when we disagree with the assessment or the opinion being offered. Or quite frankly, we say, you're shutting up too much, and we're going to judge you on that basis too. That's what happened to Anthony Edwards. That's not that many weeks ago. Does that make sense to people? Makes absolutely zero sense to me. But that's the world you live in, where there is no nuance. Then it's us or them, man. Everything, even stuff that is just pathetically unimportant. The idea that whatever like high wire we're teetering on, like Carl Wallenda, will regain our balance on the basis of which way Anthony Edwards speaks. Anthony Edwards speaks on this issue. You want to wonder why we're in trouble? That's as good a reason as any.
Speaking of meat sauce, you can join Meat Sauce and Miller Lite at Dave's Town Club in Delano tomorrow from 5 to 7. Stop by for drink specials, games. Register for your chance to win a spot in the Vikings Foundation Golf Tournament. All the details at KFAN.com, keyword golf.
We'll get back to some football conversation at the bottom of the hour. Alec Lewis will join from Indianapolis, Indiana, where the combine continues. And we'll get his view on what he's hearing. Certainly we'll probably start with the quarterback position, but go in a different direction as well. I'm left gobsmacked by the degree to which people try to transfer stories that are so much more serious and dangerous than how and why a hockey team celebrates after winning the gold medal. It astounds me. We transfer these things, again, I guess, because it makes us feel good in the moment when they have zero to do with the more significant issues and serious issues at hand that we are talking about. And it's the great irony of it, because many of these same people will tell you in other contexts, it's just sports. Who gives a bleep? What difference does it make who wins or who loses? I mean, what's any of these individuals elected? They're not, are they? But suddenly they gain something, and we treat them as if they're elected officials who have, to that extent, a certain accountability. And you know what the accountability is? It's the accountability to me. They're accountable to my opinion on a given subject. That's what they are obligated to do. And if they don't do it, I get to decide why they didn't. I mean, it's ironic because I've been accused of being rather presumptuous. And there's nothing more presumptuous than going down this particular road, as far as I'm concerned. Where's the other one I wanted to get to here? Oh, I don't know if this is true, if this has been vetted. A couple people have texted to say that Rosen had mentioned on Common Show that Walter Mondale was in the U.S. locker room in 1980 for the after either the Miracle or the gold medal. I don't know which game it would have been. That may well be true. For whatever that's worth. Now, you could say, well, those were different times politically or whatever the case may be, but that apparently maybe...
was he chugging beers?
Well, I don't know if he it's a good question. I'm not sure if he was chugging beers or screaming at the top of his lungs or whatever. Ever the case may be, I'm not exactly sure. I had one other point on the decision making, as I said, because we may never know in every case why people did what they did. Whether it was, and you could argue, well, that would be better. Just get on the record exactly why you did what you did. But I've said all along that there are many athletes who, for one reason or another, aren't interested in going down that road. And you could say, well, then they're not good citizens. And I'd say, okay, they might not be. But I'll also add, when we get stories from people in my business who say, where are the voices to speak up? Read what they write. And the question that they're really asking is, where are the voices to say what I think is the right thing to say at a time like this? To take the right position at a time like this. And that's why I don't trust those lectures. For me, that's almost all of it goes back to consistency. And then you say, that's both sides of it. Yeah, it's the complaint about both sidesing it generally comes from people who are incapable of examining the possibility that their own position or their own quote-unquote side might occasionally have a weakness. Oh, you're just whataboutism. You're just doing the both sides thing. I can play that game, too. We can all play it. You can call it both sides. I could say I'm looking for consistency. Does that mean everybody's equally guilty of whatever at any point? No. Absolutely not. But the pieces that we get occasionally regarding, where are the voices that are supposed to stand up and speak out? What they really mean is, because believe me, if it was a voice that said something that was contrary to that particular political line of thinking, they aren't going to applaud. They're going to say, well, that person's delusional. That person should keep their mouth shut. That person has no idea how much damage they're doing by taking the place that they are, or the position that they are taking. As I said with Adam, we've had politicians. I mean, politicians aren't stupid. Historically, they want to be associated with winning athletes and teams because it's good for business, politically speaking. There's always been a measure of manipulation to that. Believe me. Now, you could say it's now the ante's upped in 2025 or 26 or whatever the case may be, but that's always been a part of it that I've always kind of rolled my eyes at because it's just too easy. Are you really that excited about the team? You might be. But more importantly, you're probably excited about, well, this is a good association for me.
It's good to have them in the Rose Garden right now.
Exactly.
It's good to have the speech and have, the Twins jersey with Reagan on the back of it, right? It's good to have it.
I mean, I mentioned you before the show. There's a couple guys going back and forth, taking apart what we talked about yesterday and suggesting that everything that took place this time around, they're mad at me for ripping Patel. And they're pretending on that basis that I was savaging everybody involved with the team, including the players, which is contrary to, it's 100% contrary to what I was attempting to say yesterday. But again, in that world, it's, well, if I don't like one thing you say, then I must, then I don't have to really pay any attention to the fact that you actually were a little bit more precise in what you were criticizing and who you were criticizing. I just want it to be, there goes another one of those smug lefties who is excoriating everybody associated with American hockey, U.S. hockey, after that particular game. So there you have it. All right, let's do this. Let's get back to the toy department. I lost track of I had one other big, meaty thought, which I'll try to save and maybe get to between 5 and 5:30. Kessler's coming up in about an hour. Let's check in with our old buddy Alec Lewis. He is at the Combine in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm sure he's already gone to, what's the restaurant? St. Elmo's. It's beyond cliche at this point.
How poetic was Seifert, though, yesterday?
Yeah.
Somebody tweeted that at us as well.
Oh.
Remember when he talked about how he had already, when you asked him if he was going to St. Elmo's?
Right.
What did he say? Someone quoted it. I'm free to the world now. I can do whatever I choose. To the extent that it was an obligation, I've served it. To the extent that it was a desire, I've met it. I'm having the shrimp cocktail.
That was pretty good.
That's what he said.
That was poetic. Did he write that out?
It feels like he was reading it from a column or some food blog or something. That
sounds scripted. It's so effective. We'll come back. We'll see if Alec Lewis can be that effective. He's going to join us next. Another big day at the Combine in the greatest city in America, Indiana, at least certainly the greatest host city in America, Indianapolis.
How have they not gotten an Olympics?
Indiana. Well, let me ask, maybe
Summer
that's our first
winter
question for Alec Lewis, joining via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. You've covered a lot of events. You're still relatively young, but you've already covered a lot of stuff. Have you ever been in a city better prepared to handle big events than Indianapolis, Indiana?
It is, first, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It is exceptional in every respect. Every restaurant has the same menu. Every hotel is essentially the same. And the convention center, I talked to Brian Flores yesterday next to the Fire and Health and Safety of Indianapolis convention. It is as absurd and ridiculous as you could possibly imagine, but it's not my favorite place in the world. I'm not going to lie about it.
That's not very kind.
There you go. The truth comes out.
Are you trying to suck up to the producer of the show?
He knows.
It's just, I don't know. I got here, the weather, you're hoping it's better than what we've experienced in Minneapolis.
Well, there's no palm trees in Indianapolis. It's still the Midwest. No,
you're right. No, absolutely. Geography definitely isn't my beat. That's for sure. We've established that. But no, it's just not. I'll play the part, but it's just okay. It's Indianapolis. It's okay.
All right. So
proud of you, Alec.
What have we learned, if anything, that has advanced your understanding of the Vikings' master plan at the quarterback position?
Yeah, I don't know as of right now, as I'm talking to you, if we've learned a heck of a lot more than when Kevin O'Connell, after the season, stood up at the podium and said that the team was seeking competition. I would say, if anything, it's pretty clear that this week is being used very much as the exploratory stage of, okay, like brass tacks, who is available, what do they want, who is gettable, and let's line up all of the possibilities and make our assessment. I think that has become fairly clear at this point, that this week will set the foundation of who ends up making sense. I didn't think anything that Rob Brzezinski or Kevin O'Connell said yesterday about J.J. McCarthy was vastly different or a vast departure from anything in the way they've described him since the season ended. It was reiterating confidence. It was, establishing that this is a big off season, but being very clear that the level of quarterback play they got was not at the level they need for 2026.
Is there any way to examine or calculate what Brzezinski being in the mix might change, if anything, regarding the approach at the quarterback position that the Vikings might take?
I don't think it changes much, because as I've told a lot of people, and conversations this week have just reiterated this, like Rob Brzezinski has been the primary negotiator for the Vikings with agents, for decades now. And so his ability to, I would say, draw out the numbers that these players are seeking, representation is seeking, like that has not been a shift from the past. If anything, I would say that his understanding of the circumstance and of what these agents and players will be seeking will just add more clarity in direct conversation with Kevin O'Connell. But I've heard some of the conversation narrative that, Rob's an interim, so he'll be acting in the short term. I really don't believe that this Vikings organization is prepared to make some drastic short-term move, even with the structure being where it is right now.
Well, then maybe you just answered my next question, because I did try to get the populace going early again, playing a Shefty soundbite from a blog or from a podcast that he was on either yesterday or earlier today, in which he reintroduces the name Aaron Rodgers to the conversation, saying, yeah, chances are if he is going to come back, it's going to be with Pittsburgh, but maybe the Vikings are in a different place. Maybe Rodgers, that's the place he really wanted to go last year. So with A-Rod, anything's possible. He could announce his retirement tomorrow. He could go to Pittsburgh. I still wouldn't be shocked if somehow he ended up with Minnesota. Now, do you believe there's any reason to think that KOC, if KOC was hesitant ultimately last year to do it, do you think the change in atmosphere that seems to indicate everybody is more on the clock now, including him, that he might be more willing to revisit it, or do you think that is 100% a ship that has sailed? And when the particulars say all options are open and we're considering everything, the truth is Rodgers is not one of the options they're considering.
Yeah, I would definitely say I definitely wouldn't say it's 100% sailed and it's completely ruled out. I would say of the available options, and to name a few, like the Kirk Cousins, Kyler Murray, Derek Carr, I would say if I was ballparking it at this point, those guys would have a higher probability to end up being the name that is arriving than an Aaron Rodgers. But I do think Adam Schefter's pointing that out was in many ways just kind of a reminder or a declaration that like those conversations existed. There was a lot of mutual interest, and eventually it didn't occur. And so to just assume that it's either Pittsburgh or bust probably is inaccurate. But it is hard to imagine you would say no to a 42-year-old, and then after watching him have the season that he had, you would decide that is then the best path. It's just, that would be a really difficult one to, probably explain, but definitely to analyze for my seat.
Do you believe that if you could get them for about the same money, for example, that the truth is, regardless of reputation, regardless of, the breadth of their careers, that at this moment, Kirk Cousins is a better option for the Purple in the short term than Aaron Rodgers is?
I would say, it's extremely difficult in the sense that you can rewatch the tape of Aaron Rodgers and the flash plays do exist, and you can rewatch the tape of Kirk Cousins and, the lack of mobility exists as well. So, for me, it's the way I've described it to people and the way it's been described to me is the buckets that they want to talk about, the tiers. You have the younger player who has starting experience of a Kyler Murray type ilk. And then on that next tier, you can probably have Kirk, Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, and they're all kind of living on that same plane. And so you could argue back and forth and contrast the styles of if Aaron comes, does he bring his own system and how do the systems mesh versus Kirk Cousins would obviously run the system and know how to run it. And so you could probably convince yourself that Kirk would be a better fit, but I really view those guys and even Derek Carr within that conversation as just a similar tier and the type of player that you're acquiring.
So what else? So anything, did you get any good nuggets beyond the quarterback position? In other words, in the short run with Brzezinski at the top of the food chain, right? Philosophically speaking, do you think anything changes? Does he break ties among, the coaches who've been given a lot of power, including the head coach and including B-Flow? What do we think the managerial style in the short run here, this audition one could say, for Rob Brzezinski is going to look like?
Yeah, so the biggest thing I would say is it is pretty clear from conversations that there is a ton of respect for Rob Brzezinski, especially among the coaching staff. And like an example of where I think they want this thing to get to is that the personnel side and the coaching side tonight, all of them are going out to dinner. And that includes everybody, and it's not something they've done in the past. And so the way, just my discernment of how they want to take this thing the next 2 months is, Rob, you're in charge of the personnel side. There's a healthy level of respect and trust in what you do and how you approach things. Kevin and the coaching side has a similar level of trust and respect, and it's going to be about trying to bridge those two worlds in a way that had not been done in previous seasons. And we've obviously talked about, and I've written about, just the level of, I don't know whether you want to call it tension or conflict or disagreements between the two sides. So that's first and foremost. Like, I think they are in the process of trying to repair and mend like those two sides rowing on the same team. So that's pretty clear from the outset. It does sound like Rob will have final authority, but I would imagine in every possible circumstance he will defer to Kevin O'Connell, and then defensively, Brian Flores' voice will carry a lot of weight. The other thing that I've heard a lot here that I do think is important to mention, and Rob kind of went there a little bit yesterday, was this team has spent a lot of cash over the last couple of years, and you have people from other teams looking at the Vikings situation going like, at some point, like that bill is coming due, and to think that you continue to spend $50 million cash over cap year after year is just not a realistic path. And so there is definitely a sense and a view from people around the league of the Vikings situation to try to assess, like, how are they going to approach this? Because they are $43 million over the cap, and what type of avenues are they going to try to take, and mechanisms that they're going to try to pull to get it to a place at which it is palatable for ownership. And that leads me to the last point. Mark Wilf is here in Indianapolis. I can't say that I have seen him here and covering combines in the past, and so whether that's as part of the GM situation, whether that's his involvement, that has stuck out to me that he is here and present, and I saw him around the hotels earlier this morning.
Alec Lewis covers the Vikings for The Athletic. Kessler will join us at probably about 5:30 this evening as well. I'm glad you brought up the money, because one of the quotes that did get my attention today, Rob Brzezinski was on with PA, and two things struck me. One is that he shattered the combined record held by KOC and Adolfo Mensa for the use of the word alignment. He shattered the mark. I think it was easily double digits. It might have been triple digits. But one thing that I think I liked a little better than that was a belief that you build teams through the draft, which I think was his way of saying exactly what you're talking about, that the bill ultimately and inevitably comes due if you are every year constantly, very ambitiously trying to sort of paper over your draft mistakes by spending big money. And it isn't sustainable. It's not going to work. So in the short run, given how much we're over the cap, does that pretty much preclude, in your mind, the chances that we might make even one significant splash in free agency, or not necessarily?
Yeah, I would say not necessarily, but you're really living in these two worlds. It's like you want to get the train back on the tracks for 2026, but not do it to where you're at the expense of your entire future. And it's like it's like the quarterback situation. It's like where they're at with Rob as the interim GM. Like, they're trying to thread all of these different needles at the same time, which is why when you talk to people here, like, a lot of people around the league view the Vikings as it's almost as interesting as it gets because of the juggling act that they're undertaking. But I would say there are a lot of levers that they can pull, one of them even being extensions. Like, for a guy like Brian O'Neill, that is a possibility, and I would expect the Vikings to try to get something done with him that would lessen his cap for 2026 to provide some flexibility. There's restructure potential. So I am not ruling out the possibility that this team finds a way to create enough space to supplement their roster. But your point and I would say, listening to Rob and hearing him say what he wants to build through the draft, that's the only way this team is going to get to the mountaintop, is if that record improves. And as you can beat that, you beat that line like a dead horse, but it is really true. If you don't build through the draft, it's just not going to be possible to be a sustainable, consistent winner. And every team that has won in the recent years has proven that. Well,
the sticky wicket is, in the short run, because they have done so poorly drafts largely the last 4 years, is they need probably to do both, because you're not going to be able to fix everything via the draft unless you literally hit on every choice in one season anyway. That's the sad reality, is they are kind of stuck in both worlds, and I guess in the end it'll depend on his ability to move money around and to be creative with what you might be, at one point you might be able to do. A couple texters are asking, and by the way, if you have questions for Alec, hit the Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line 64686. We've talked so much about the quarterback situation. They want to know a timetable. Like, how quickly do we think we're going to get this answered in terms of who the free agent might be, the veteran free agent might be? Are we talking about a couple of weeks? Are we talking about well after the draft? Or how fast do you think we're going to get the number one question answered?
Yeah, I mean, March 9th is when the legal tampering period opens, and that is, I think, a week and a half from now. And I would be pretty surprised if, around that date, whether it's the 9th or the 10th or before that date, you don't have a pretty clear understanding, because the worst, and we've talked about this too, the worst thing that can happen is you extend past that date, other players choose certain spots, and then you're left kind of in the musical chairs without a chair. That's essentially the circumstance. So the legal tampering period, again, it's March 9th. It's a week and a half away. That is when the flurry of activity tends to happen. So, this next 10 days is going to be busy. This is where you could see trades of guys who are going to get released. This is where you're going to see a lot of guys getting released because of the accelerators in their contract. I don't believe the wait is going to last much longer into March than that.
Well, that's good, right? Because I don't think anybody wants to wait much longer than that, and because it feels like it's getting old. I do think it seems fairly clear that, we have not had yet a declaration that J.J. McCarthy is the incumbent or is the number one quarterback, correct? Words are important, and it seems fairly, what's the term? Intentional. That's another one of the with it and wow terms of the day, that the Vikings brain wizards have taken this approach, correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah. The way they have phrased it now for a month and a half is that they want serious competition for J.J. McCarthy. The Kevin O'Connell quote from yesterday, that was, the timetable now is not what it was when I declared J.J. the franchise quarterback of the future the day they announced his torn meniscus. And I do think that was his way of insinuating that, you can feel a certain way about a player, specifically a quarterback, at a certain time, but the more you spend time, the more you observe, the more you watch, the more you know, opinions can evolve. They can move, they can shift. And so for me, that quote was, in many ways informative in the sense that, look, they know they need a certain level of quarterback play, and there's only so many paths to acquiring it, and if they don't acquire it, then they risk reproducing what was 2025. And if you do that beyond their own self-preservation, you have a superstar receiver in the heart of his prime who has a distinct competitive playoff expectation and an ownership with that expectation. So, yeah, no question, it has been intentional to use that word. And I think it's also intentional in terms of how they message it to representatives and players who will be assessing this as an opportunity.
No, that's exactly where I wanted to go next. And I don't know if we've covered this before. I know I've covered it with Seifert from time to time. So forgive me if we have. It's still, I think, relevant. And that's the question of whether there's a notion of levels. In other words, this QB we have identified as a possibility for us that might be attainable is of a level that if we go after him, we are telling him, you are the starter. Here's another level where we say, well, you can come in, you can compete for the job. We still have high hopes for J.J. McCarthy, but no guarantees on anything. How is that going to play out? Is that a crucial distinction? And, are there quarterbacks in each level, including the level that says you pretty much, if you're going after him and you think you want to get him, especially if he has other options, you have to pretty much say to him, you are our starting quarterback when the 2026 season begins?
Yeah, those conversations definitely emerge between teams and agents and players. The fascinating kind of road to go down would be in the event that you have, let's say, 3 available quarterbacks at similar cost and similar level who you would think they would want to be the starter, but if they're all vying for the Vikings opportunity, would they then almost, like, you have the leverage of, would they be more willing to be like, I'll go in there and I have the confidence in myself that they'll take the opportunity regardless. Like, that's where this potentially could get, because, and I don't know if it's surprising to me, but with every conversation I've had, it's pretty clear that the Vikings opportunity is still incredibly coveted. So, like, what I would say is, if Kyler Murray ends up being the player,
right,
it's pretty obvious that he would be the starting quarterback. I mean, that's just abundantly clear.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're talking about like a Kirk Cousins, would he be malleable, believing in what he would bring and what he is, to not needing that verbiage completely spelled out? I mean, it becomes a little bit of gray area.
Yes.
And it's murky there, but there is no question that player agents and these players and quarterbacks will be very aware and mindful, and want to be very aware and mindful of the circumstance that they are walking into.
So who's the former Saints Raiders QB that allegedly is coming out of retirement, or might, for the right deal? Who is that?
Derek Carr.
Yeah. So which level do you put him at? Is he a guy you'd say you can come in, or is that a guy that, if you really are interested in him, you're pretty much same thing as you're suggesting in at least one of these cases, the Kyler Murray case? You're saying you're going to be our starter.
Yeah, you would imagine if Derek Carr is coming out of retirement to then be traded to the Minnesota Vikings, he wouldn't be doing that with the potential that he'd be sitting on the bench. I mean, that is really hard to envision and imagine. From a player standpoint, again, I view him on the Kirk Cousins type tier, the Geno Smith type tier, the Aaron Rodgers type tier, because he literally has been on the couch and was recently recovering from a serious shoulder injury. But you could also convince yourself with Derek Carr. I mean, he has really produced. In Clint Kubiak's offense in 2024, he was viable. He can throw the football down the field. He is smart. He is professional. So, you would understand if that is the route that they go. It would raise the question of, what is the ceiling with a player like that? But as we've discussed right now, as long as the floor is a baseline level, then I think the Vikings are going to be okay with that in 2026.
A sneaky observation from Clayton out of Rochester. A-Raj played all but one game outdoors last year. Next year with the purple, he would have 10 indoors. The real question is, how fast does Alec think he'll be wearing number 8 next year? He's pushing it, man. He's trying. I mean, he is. I think he's at a point now where, he probably likes not having to mess with the weather. He used to be good in weather, but he's almost 50.
I mean, it's funny because the Rodgers thing, makes me revisit everything from last spring, and I've thought about it so often. At the time of the reporting, a lot of people, I think, insinuated that, like, Aaron Rodgers was pushing everything, but there was a healthy contingent of Vikings staff, and I mean healthy, that were very interested in that happening. So, again, that's part of the reason why when you asked if I 100% rule it out, I'd say no. It's just, I mean, it's difficult to imagine what would happen if he's on the field producing hand signals to Justin Jefferson and Kevin O'Connell isn't sure what the play is going to be. That would be a fascinating story to cover. It would be interesting. Now, the most important question. We learned again yesterday that the previous night, Seifert had the team dinner at St. Elmo's. Everybody from the ESPN empire was there. I know you guys at The Athletic are very competitive about that, and you like to establish your own traditions, even if they're, haven't been around quite as long. So are you having a group athletic dinner, or have you already had a similar one at that landmark Indianapolis restaurant? I think ESPN has us there. I'm not going to lie. We do come in, all the Athletic staff flies in Sunday night, and then there's little small group dinners. Then Monday we do an entire athletic summit where they talk about all of our favorite things, including search engine optimization, video, and the rest of it. But really what they do is just praise the work of John Krasinski and Michael Russo, and it makes me feel bad. But yeah, it's not as relaxed as St. Elmo's, I would say.
All right, well, fair enough. By the way, if you talk to Russo anytime soon, would you tell him we look forward to reaching him at some point? Because he's gone. He's all but ghosted us for the last 2 weeks.
He texted us yesterday, and we're kind of ghosting him.
Finally, yeah. After 2 weeks, we couldn't get near him when he was. Bill Guerin was easier to get a hold of in Italy than Russo Radio.
Yeah, I haven't talked to Michael, but I would imagine he would just be out still celebrating with Boldy. I mean, I don't know why he wouldn't be in that circumstance. So I'll let him know. I'll toss him a line, but that's a little worrisome. I'm not going to lie.
Well, for us, it's we do not need a schism after all these decades with Russo. So, in all seriousness, I think we're going to try to get him on tomorrow. But I don't know. Who knows if he's going to be? He might still be partying. Maybe he's still in Miami for all we know.
I do know he covered Frost practice today, so he's back in town. We'll see if he's heading out to Denver tomorrow.
Okay.
We'll find out.
Very good.
He could, I mean, look, he spent time in Milan, but I mean, it's no Indianapolis, so maybe we can get him here. Who knows?
It's true. He's probably jealous of your assignment, getting to hang out in Indy.
Do not sleep on the Italian food in Indianapolis. I'm just telling you. Do not sleep on it. There's a couple of little corner restaurants. I can't name them.
Guard for some spots.
That's it.
It's all steak, ribeye.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Bacon. I mean, I don't know. I'm going to come back and I mean, I'm going to need to hit the shoulders. I really am.
It's a meat and potatoes kind of town. There's no question about that. I mean, it's not a street tough town like Chicago, but it tries to be. I think that's why I think there's that much steak on the menu. I'm pretty sure.
Absolutely.
Have a wonderful rest of your time in Indy, and thanks for the time as always. We'll talk soon.
Always fun. Thank you, guys.
Alec Lewis from The Athletic, kind enough to join us. Kessler's in the house. He's going to join probably about 5:30ish or so. Top 5 at 5 is right around the corner.
Wolves win, Gophers lose, and a Vikings quarterback projection from ESPN.com, which I can only believe means Kevin Seifert.